What is up, all you robo bros and photon powered floozies, and welcome to The World is My Burrito, aka Twimby, a podcast where I take months to release content because I am terrible at scheduling and great at rewriting everything from the bottom up. As always, I am your host, Corey T, coming at you from Tampa, Florida, this fine November 21st, 2023. This is episode number 20, which will primarily focus on the Urasawa Tezuka crossover manga PLUTO, but will also touch on the original Astro Boy story by Osamu Tezuka titled The Greatest Robot on Earth. I will not actually be covering the new Astro Boy anime on Netflix, more about that later. Now, this will be a little bit of a different episode because of the subject matter. Nothing bad, just a lot of thinky stuff. When this episode began, I wrote more about the content that I was holding in my hands, and also almost as more of a walkthrough for those who had not read it. But the more I wrote, the more I needed to express what was on my mind. Kind of like what I did in Ghost of Tsushima, but hopefully a little bit better this time around. I'm just going to get right in with the hot take. Off the top and spoiler free, I will say PLUTO is absolutely a recommendation. I love how the tale is dissected and how every facet, especially the individual characters, ramp up. Urasawa seems well versed in film, and it shows with the time jumps and flashbacks, and doing a great job of encapsulating some parts of this story, giving them their own time to shine without ever removing you from the story. Almost everything is relevant in the moment or will be soon, with the seemingly irrelevant ones revealing themselves at pivotal points or giving you something more to think about if you so desire. Now, a little bit of my personal history with this. This may come as a surprise to you, but I was not familiar with any of Urasawa's work prior to reading PLUTO. And this is still the only thing of his that I've read. However, I have read Tezuka's The Greatest Robot on Earth in 2019, then again in prep for this episode. It's readily available in Dark Horse's Volume 1 of the Astro Boy Omnibus. As far as PLUTO goes, I read this once to kind of get into it, and I think like end of last year or earlier this year, and only read it. And then the second time, specifically for this, to take notes. And I gotta say, I was hooked just as hard, if not harder, than the first time. Now we're gonna move along to the book and some of the anime info. The Greatest Robot on Earth, or in Japanese, Chijo Saidai no Roboto, released in Shonen Magazine, not to be confused with Shonen Jump, beginning in either March or June of 1964 and ending in January of 1965. Like, which one is it? Why am I finding conflicting information? Anyways, the entire story spans some 178 pages. By the magazine title, this is for the shonen, or 12 to 18-year-old demographic. PLUTO, published by Shogakukan in their Big Comic Original, or Big Comic Original, spanning 8 volumes, released between September 5th, 2003 and April 4th, 2009, aimed at the seinen, or 18 and up demographic. Chijo Saidai no Roboto, the anime, has been made and remade several times in various eras of Astro Boy's life. There's the original from 1963, again in the 1980s, and finally in 2003. These are all specifically the Osamu Tezuka Astro Boy anime. And of course, most recently is Urasawa's PLUTO anime, released October 26th of 2023, with a total of 8 episodes, 1 episode per volume. And this is partially why I don't want to cover the anime. In my heart of hearts, I know that covering one will lead me to searching for and covering them all. And this is already kind of a unique episode that took a lot to get out. I don't know, maybe I'll do the animated series down the line, just for fun. Some creator and character history. Osamu Tezuka. Whether or not you've listened to any of my previous episodes covering Tezuka's content, I'll give you another brief rundown. Tezuka has a lot of content involving racial and social inequality, using robots as the other. He studied for years to be a doctor and even got his degree, but his manga and love for animation inevitably overtook those plans. I'd give you a list, but it's everything. He did everything. He did everything always until he died, and that is not an entirely inaccurate statement. Yeah, someday I'll get around to the magnum opus that will be about his life and career, but that is not today. Now, this next little bit of info is a real kicker, but requires a warning because there's no hard articles. It's stated in the Astro Boy Omnibus forward and then the Pluto afterward. But in the 1960s, Tezuka made several troubling comments during interviews. One, that Astro Boy was never supposed to get this big, and, quote, he has become a monster, unquote. Another, that he felt trapped by the need to satisfy his young fans' desires for battling robots. And a final comment being in manga when some citizens are referring to Adam as a monster and Tenma referring to him as a total failure, which could be exemplary of Tezuka's own feelings. He could never have guessed that this would be, and still is, I think, his most popular Mighty Atom story to date. Now on to Naoki Urasawa. He was born in 1960, so he's grown up around this stuff. He's a monumental mangaka with such titles under his belt as 20th Century Boys, Monster, Master Keaton, Yawara, Happy, and currently Asadora. He's also a musician. At 4 to 5 years old, his grandparents bought him the Mighty Atom titles, The Greatest Robot on Earth, and The Artificial Sun. Young Urasawa felt that the prior was the saddest story he'd ever read, and for many years thought this, so it had a great impact on his childhood. He started drawing at a very young age and imitated artists like Tezuka and another prominent mangaka, Shinji Nagashima, before focusing more on Katsuhiro Otomo in 1979. His personal work, Monster, cemented his personal artistic style. Now, this title, Pluto, was conceived under the auspices of Makoto Tezuka, the son of Osamu Tezuka. The creative team certainly isn't complete, with our final guy being plot collaborator and close partner of Urasawa, Takashi Nagasaki, who has worked with Urasawa on many projects. Now, a little bit about the book creation history. Let me pull things back a little bit, then slingshot you right into the future. In the 1950s, Tezuka picked April 7th, 2003 as his two-dimensional child's birthday. Fast forward to the infant 2000s, Urasawa thinks that someone should take up the mantle of recreating a Mighty Atom tale, but initially doesn't think it's the job for him. Eventually, he did reach the conclusion, hey, maybe I should be the guy to do this, but didn't immediately seek to make this happen. However, in 2002, while Urasawa has been building up ideas for his potential tale and the courage to propose it, someone reached out to Makoto in advance saying that he should consider Urasawa for a new Atom series. You see, in the very near future, it would be Adam's previously listed date of birth. Not just a birthday, but the birthday for the most influential character who provided a positive outlook in post-war Japan. And Japan was celebrating by releasing a brand new Mighty Atom animated series. The 2003 Robodex exhibition was also celebrating this momentous occasion by creating an area at the center of the show named Atom Dream Factory. Our life-size hero was lying on a table, surrounded by industrial robots. Every 30 minutes, the robots would reenact the moment of his birth, then Adam would sit upright and raise his arm. There's a super cute photo of Makoto shaking hands with Adam here. Maybe I'll remember to put it in the YouTube video. Additionally, in the postscript of Pluto Volume 2, Makoto mentions some kind of My Atom exhibition where fan art was displayed. Side note, it sounds like this is something that happened previous to the Robodex exhibition, but I cannot find a single bit of data about that. Anyways, Makoto says he observed that so many of the fan submissions were homages or tributes to Osama in Osama's style, and felt like nobody was making it their own. Hop on over to March 28th of 2003. Urasawa and Makoto finally meet. Urasawa is ready, and Makoto is nervous. As the representative of the Tezuka name, even something as seemingly harmless as meeting with artists can be misconstrued as giving permission. And no matter what the outcome, he will have to take the heat from at least some disapproving fans. Urasawa spoke passionately about the greatest robot on Earth, his new ideas for a new story, and showed some sketches. Apparently, Astro Boy and Gerhardt, Gesicht's name in the original tale, were too visibly similar and identifiable. Makoto laid out the one condition. This needed to be Urasawa's work, not Osamu's. He wanted to watch Urasawa go head-on with Osamu Tezuka, godfather of manga and Japanese pop culture as we know it, and Makoto would referee. Hope you're not bummed that there isn't more history, because there is, but we'll get there in time. The synopsis, which can be found in their respective books. The greatest robot on Earth, a sultan called Chochi Ababa III, has built a robot named Pluto to be the king of all robots. He sends him to fight 7 other powerful robots to prove that they are indeed the greatest on Earth. Done. Pluto. In an ideal world where man and robots coexist, someone or something has destroyed the powerful Swiss robot Mont Blanc. Elsewhere, a key figure in a robot's right group is murdered. The two incidents appear to be unrelated, except for one very conspicuous clue. The bodies of both victims have been fashioned into some sort of bizarre collage, complete with makeshift horns placed by the victims' heads. Interpol assigns robot detective Gesicht to this most strange and complex case, and he eventually discovers that he, too, as one of the 7 great robots of the world, is one of the targets. Spoiler warning, if you don't want this mecha burrito spoiled, I recommend you put it back in your mecha fridge for a little while longer. Read the manga, or watch the anime, but come back when you've gained a little humanity or had an extremely traumatic experience. So plot summary, my breakdown of the greatest robot on Earth. The plot is definitely the simpler of the two. Sultan Chochi Ababa III hires scientist Dr. Abula to create the most powerful robot in the world to go around killing all the other robots because he has a Napoleon complex and literally just wants to rule all robots. After killing Mont Blanc, it immediately goes to fight Astro Boy. Ochanomizu tells Astro no, then he tells Pluto no, so Pluto leaves. He takes out more bots, then challenges Astro Boy by literally calling his landline. Uran, Astro's sister, answers both the phone call and call to action, so Pluto kidnaps her to entice Adam to fight. Adam responds, but Brando steps in and manages to incapacitate Pluto. He does die, though. Adam is gracious and allows Pluto to live, returning home with Uran. Ochanomizu does some detective work to find Pluto's creator. Adam does some sneaky work following Ochanomizu, who gets kidnapped, and then Astro and Pluto fight. Pluto rather handily defeats Adam, but lets him go. A life for a life. Astro reluctantly returns to Japan and asks Dr. Tenma to upgrade him to 1 million horsepower. Pluto kills more robots, Astro awakens with an unquenchable rage, hunts Pluto, does a dumb, and ends up in an abyss that not even Pluto is willing to search by himself. So Pluto goes to the second to last robot on his list, Epsilon, for help. They save an unconscious Astro, then split. Back at the Sultan's castle, the mysterious Dr. Goji appears with the stay-puffed marshmallow robot named Bora and challenges the Sultan to a duel while Pluto is busy in Australia killing Epsilon. The Sultan sends a snail mail letter to Astro challenging him once again to fight Pluto atop Mount Aso, an active volcano in Japan. Astro accepts, but their fight is interrupted by Goji and Bora. Goji reveals himself as Abula, who made Bora with the Sultan's funding specifically to fight Pluto. Astro and Pluto fight until Mount Aso starts erupting. Astro and Pluto team up to throw rocks in the opening to stop it, then double team against Bora. Astro keeps taking breaks to save people while Pluto is getting his shit torn apart. Pluto is inevitably defeated and explodes, taking Bora with him. Dr. Abula then reveals that he himself is actually the Sultan's previous butler who got a degree in robotic engineering, and the story ends. It's a ride. It's not complex, but it's kind of wild because, Dr. Abula or Dr. Professor Goji challenges Pluto and then waits. Okay, whatever. I avoided a world history section earlier because it gives away a lot of important details. If you're a US citizen and a millennial or older, you'll know where this is going. Even so, I'm still not going to give you the entire plot because holy shit. 4 years ago, the United States of Thracia wanted to prove their mettle to the world by accusing Persia's King Darius XIV of working with an elusive scientist to create an army of robots of mass destruction. Thracia used this accusation to garner the support of the United Nations, who dispatched a group of scientists, going by the mysterious acronym BORA, to verify. Before any real discovery could be made, the massacre of a nation began. Persia was brought down to ashes with the help of 5 of the greatest robots the world had to offer. One additional robot was brought in for cleanup detail, and one more as the personification of world peace. Fast forward to today, the world's strongest robot, Mont Blanc, has been killed and his head placed in a ritualistic fashion, with branches placed on either side to resemble horns. Shortly after, robot rights activist Bernard Lanke is murdered in Germany in a similar fashion, this time with a lamp and a piece of metal for horns. Interpol agent Gesicht is sent in to investigate and notices this pattern. The second incident leads to a string of international murders, bouncing back and forth between the world's strongest robots and their creators, and its most important robots' rights leaders. While on this murder express, we learn about the humanity within robot AI, how the AI of some have been manipulated to achieve the desires of those in a higher power, how trauma changes people, and what happens when a perfect robot is created. I really hope that does it justice. Before getting into the thick of it, I want to begin at the beginning. In a world that is clearly ours, the US of A is suspiciously absent from the list of nations. The beginning of this entire tale seems to be pretty unabashedly chastising the US for our decisions in Afghanistan. I don't know Urasawa's intent here, but with a 2003 release, this was a very easy topic to pick, especially from a country of creators who constantly use real wars as the canvas of their stories. So maybe it wasn't calling us out. It's also worth noting the hidden weapons of mass destruction is a very Russia and North Korea kind of theme. Thracia is definitely a combo of at least 3 different nations. It's also giving us so many catalysts. Mankind selfishly blamed mankind for unfounded war crimes as an excuse to commit war crimes, then honestly got away with it for a good few years. Robot soldiers were sent to do all the dirty work. Body count-wise, robots were those who were harmed the most. In a tale about traumatic events changing the fabric of someone's being, all of our robots were involved in the most traumatic of the events. Honestly, I think Dr. Obula was the only human of our tale to really have to directly deal with the war crimes. The whole Bora team only saw the wild robot massacre. And with what we're getting to in a few minutes, Obula's thoughtless massacre of robots really does stand out on its own. Probably the most surface level real world comparison that can be made to like this part of the example is in war, every human fighter is a cog in the grander machine. And historically, every man is as disposable as is required to achieve the end goal. As were the robots in this tale, no matter how much money was spent to create them. Moving on from that, I'm just going to jump to the finale, where mankind begins robots and mankind begets war. Nature is the tool used to get the job done. One of the most powerful supervolcanoes in history is... My light just went out. Whatever. If you're watching the video, the light's just going to be out now. Yeah, I'm blue, dabba-dee-dabba-die. One of the most powerful supervolcanoes in history is Yellowstone. Its last eruption was 1,000 times larger than Mount St. Helens. And where America does not exist in this tale, somehow Yellowstone does. That has to be intentional. Currently, Yellowstone is what's called a caldera. A caldera is a depression created after a volcano releases the majority of the contents of its magma chamber in an explosive eruption. Without any structural support below, the land around the erupting volcanic vent or vents collapses inwardly, creating the bowl-shaped caldera. The Yellowstone caldera itself measures 35 by 40 miles and sits atop a magma plume 465 miles long. Scientists don't expect it to go off anytime soon, like even within the next 10,000 years, but the nature of a caldera makes it difficult to truly tell if any future explosions will be in short bursts or one very large unhappy burst. So in this tale of man battling machines and vice versa, featuring the most powerful weapons ever manufactured by man's hands, nature is still the greatest weapon. Now, the most important part of this tale to me are the characters. Tezuka has a lot of black and white characters with one or two shades of gray mixed in. But Urasawa built a massive color wheel of racial views on robots and, whether accidental or designed, views on artificial intelligence. These are my favorite details in the story, which I would like to address with you. Now, this has been one of the most oddly difficult sections to work on because it was originally supposed to be an interview trading ideas, not a monologue. And with the monologue comes a need for greater details. And with time, I've been able to think about these details day and night. So here we are. PLUTO has two fairly identical mirrored constructs of racial opinions, the most developed of which is the human perception of robots, while the other is the robot's perception of humans. Before this gets too deep and to foil my own simplicity, I'd like to drive a wedge between robots and AI. Now, in lieu of the material and that 1960s magic, I will exclusively refer to robots as just that, but with the caveat that these robots also have cognitive AI. For now, they'll be one and the same, though there is absolutely a difference between those two things, which I'll get to later. Stuck in a world of their own design, where interacting and working with robots is unavoidable, our cast ranges from individuals who love and respect all robots as equals, like Professor Ochinamizu, to the literal robot KKK. But that outlook is too simple. While this list of observations is meant to be something of a cruise from white to black, any type of categorization mentioned is as imperfect as the humans they represent. Professor Ochanomizu doesn't even see gray. He is so entranced with robots that all of the robots in this story appear the same in his eyes, regardless of generation or capabilities. From the Hasbro iDog he repairs later in the tale to Adam, their value is the same. Now, this isn't without its problems. Early on in the tale, they mention a dog car design and him getting frustrated over this. His mentality displays something of a disconnect with average human reactions to these creations. Sure, he's at the forefront of robots and certain machines' designs, catering the former to realism, but that goal is more than likely a push by the Japanese Ministry of Science, or possibly to match reality with his perception of robots. We have more torn characters like Dr. Tenma, who has the greatest understanding of what AI is, yet seems to eschew it because it isn't human. When his son Toby dies, he creates Adam, and Adam is far too perfect, so he abandons him and his job and disappears. He doesn't hate robots, but sees their mimicry as imperfection. Adam acts very much like a child, but is respectful and tidy, characteristics that are not Toby. Dr. Tenma has now lost one thing twice and is staring at his third failure. This causes him to create two of the mightiest and most dangerous robots on Earth. He's the embodiment of your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should. Creating things that are not only a danger to themselves and their type, but the entire human race and Earth as we know it. More on him later. An interesting character adjustment is Superintendent Tawashi. In the OG stories, he's one hell of a pendulum. He's always doing exactly what his job requires of him. If the story asks him to actually round up robots and send them to die, he'll do it without question. If in the next panel he's required to support robots, he's all about it. But this new Tawashi only finds them burdening. He's not hateful, but at the first human murder site is introduced as being demeaning towards the robots analyzing the site data. All robots, including Adam, are just there to do a job and little else. The greatest catalogers and detectives for the police force are robots, yet they hold no humanity to him. This story kind of makes me wonder what his job actually is if robots are actually doing everything. Contrary to Tawashi, and still in the beginning of the tale, one of his own patrolmen first refers to his partner as Robbie, then as Patrolbot. There's an additionally fun question here. Is this a man who sees robots as equals, or a man who does not realize himself as nothing more than a soft machine? This point is never pushed any further, so there's no evidence either way. It's just a fun thought. I'd say the perfect characteristic middle is actually PLUTO/Sahad. Sahad's personal goals were a massive boon to mankind, but Pluto is forced to do the most political harm to both humans and robots alike. His good actions are his own, while his evil actions are directed by a human who's actually another robot. The robot is good and the robot is evil. Only at the finale does he decide for himself and become the tragic hero who gives the ultimate sacrifice. He is also the only character to really struggle with identity. Is Pluto the mask, or is Sahad the mask? Which body is truly his and which goal is truly his? Following that up, the perfect physical middle is Dr. Abula/Goji. Even sensors can't really identify whether he's robot or human, and hey, neither can he. It's like he's ascended to the Tyrell Corporation vision of more human than human. Aesthetics aside, Dr. Abula's side sees to it that everything is equally hated. PLUTO is meant to destroy the world's strongest robots, aka the world's strongest defenses, and robots in political power, and those who were part of the Goji investigation party. Despite his own hatred of mankind, not even the Abula side sees how much hatred he truly contains, and the wrath that Goji intends on releasing to the world. I guess if Abula is Thin Boo, Goji is Kid Boo. We can start our descent to darkness with Adolf Haas, who only hates robots subjectively. He is the character from a shit upbringing, just trying to get by. After his father lost his factory job to robots, he couldn't get back on his feet. Inevitably, his father did wrong and was caught by a robot and arrested over a soccer ball, which led him to suicide almost immediately after leaving jail. Down the line, Adolf's brother did wrong and was murdered by a robot. And because of that, he hates robots despite everyone creating their own downfall, and once again, his entire company depends on robots. On the other side of Adolf's token, society seems to have a great part in creating these monsters. Obviously, this part isn't fully developed, but in our own world, there haven't always been options for those replaced by automation. Adolf's hatred of robots isn't entirely unfounded, and when it comes down to it, he is still a victim. But for a guy directly involved with politicians, he never looks around to see where his father's problem may have originated from. And that is his fault. His brother's crimes are never revealed, but everyone hates him, so it's pretty safe to say, fuck that guy. The KKK just hate robots because they are mostly politicians who literally have nothing better to do with their lives. Hatred for the sake of hatred and going out of their way to do nothing for the benefit of mankind. But, as with tradition, they hate robots so much they'll kill as many humans as it takes to get their way. I don't think I would say that the president of Thracia sees robots as equals or as tools. Teddy Roosevelt is doing all the work, and the president is just kind of vibing, thinking he's in charge of something. He is the soft machine. All of the signs are there. He has more information than we do, but he's the only one who doesn't see it until Teddy spells it out to him. But he did agree to create a world of prejudice against a whole human race and robots. Now, Teddy is an advanced AI that sees the human race as tools. The whole plot hinges on these two robots that Tenma created, yet the real problem is this mysterious AI that doesn't exist in a conventional body, and definitely lacks whack lasers or weapons of any kind. Teddy is genuinely the most enigmatic of the bunch. It's willing to wipe out an exact percentage of the human race, leaving some alive to be servants. But why would the robots even need servants after Bora does its job? They're made in factories, meaning they can self-replicate. Adding to the enigma is the question of Teddy's origin. Within this tale, Tenma is the only one who can create the most powerful robots in the world, yet Teddy still exists and seems just as capable of deviative thought as Abula, PLUTO, Adam, and Brow 1589. Which I sure hope you didn't think I forgot about one of the most important characters in our entire tale. A character who holds an even greater importance than I could ever have imagined, and single-handedly increased the complexity of this episode. Well, forget about it. Brow 1589 pisses me off and is getting his own episode. Or mini-sode. I'll decide when it's done. Don't at me. But I will say this, Brow's history is actually a lot more relevant in theme to Urasawa's story than The Greatest Robot on Earth. But we can talk about one of the other most important characters in this series who makes for a phenomenal segue, Robbie the robot's wife. She's only in the first book and nothing hinges on her, but she is important to this discussion. Robbie's wife is a maid bot that seems to be pretty close to the lowest form of robot, like one step up above the Hasbro dog. Yet she displays the beginnings of what could be considered emotion. She can only relate the loss of her husband to an experience with her employers whose son was sad for days at the loss of a dog. This is all she has to go on, but this is enough to elicit the response of wanting to hold on to her husband's memories and have them meshed with her own memories. She is grasping onto humanity harder than anyone in this story. One of my favorite panels is after the memory chip is inserted, she puts her hand over her heart area and says, "He's right here." So this is a good point to get into artificial intelligence and like cognitive intelligence. What is artificial intelligence? The theory and development of computer systems able to perform tasks that normally require human intelligence, such as visual perception, speech recognition, decision making, and translation between languages. Notice this is a very task-oriented description. In the real world, Photoshop's healing and clone tools are AI. And they are. That doesn't sound very fun by comparison to ChatGPT, which provides a parasocial relationship of sorts. But honestly, ChatGPT is just the text version of the healing brush. Nothing in the description mentions mimicking or experiencing human emotion. In reality, we aren't quite there yet, so that's reasonable. Now, what is the approach to artificial intelligence in this tale? Starting from the baseline, these robots are presented almost from like the Asimovian guidelines, though the third rule seems to be kind of thrown out. They aren't allowed to harm humans, and they have a job to do. That's basically like both of the dogs that are in this tale. The next step up would be Robbie's wife, who just has a job as a maid until she seems to grasp a minutia of what emotions are. And honestly, the next step up from there is pretty drastic. Most of the robots in this tale exhibit humanity. When speaking with Gesicht, Astro states he understood what delicious meant after pretending for so long. Amongst the chaos of motor skills and speech, we try to instruct our own children how to be. You say, when food is good, and rub your tummy. You attempt to direct every form of misunderstanding, positive or negative. It is humanity directly taught. Then there's heuristic learning. Adam is in school around kids the same age as his appearance. Adam understands the excitement over the flying saucer toy because the act of using it is what we call fun. But additional value is placed on it since its releases are limited. This thing causes fun and is not readily available, traits that he has learned from the other children in his school. So from just Adam's conversation in the ice cream shop, at what point does mimicry become emotion? All of the robots want to care for each other, which seems to come from their experiences on the battlefield. Mont Blanc was a hero to children and a preserver of nature. North number 2 wants to learn how to use his murderous body to help an old man and create musical art. Hercules wants revenge for Brando. Both Brando and Jupiter are taking care of human children, adopted human children. Astro cries and feels sorrow when he sees what Gesicht has forgotten. Gesicht wants to do right by Robbie's wife, to whom he owes absolutely nothing. The story's requirements for ascending beyond base level are artificial intelligence to cognitive intelligence is by inducing a severe negative emotion. But are they actually being taught what something like hate is, or is it simpler? Are these emotions the only way a robot knows how to define something that goes against their programming? But then on the other end, if it's more complex, Gesicht is the only one that learns hate through personal experience. Both Dr. Abula and Astro learn to hate after memories are physically inserted. Gesicht even goes so far as to develop PTSD, and I really do love that about his character. Particularly because that PTSD shred of a memory is directly related to the best moment of his life, the moment that taught him love. Robbie's death seems to be something of a trigger point for his wife, one of the most basic creations in this tale, to realize there is something beyond programming, but she does relate it to past experiences. So again, when does mimicry become emotion? When does it become learned? Are those mutually exclusive? Even we as humans experience things in different ways. Sometimes it's based on our own genetic programming, and sometimes it's just based on watching others. My final point is the human response to AI, which is somewhat varied, although most don't see anything beyond a robot is a robot. AI and robots are one and the same. However, some are afraid of that mutual exclusion, as indicated by the responses to Brau and Gesicht. They programmed a thing to learn, and learn it did. Some don't care about what AI is doing, in the case of someone like the president of Thracia. Or maybe he's just an idiot who also thought a robot is a robot and completely ignored the outright murderous intent. That's all. Maybe now you better understand the difficulty of releasing this episode. It's kind of a lot, and I hope the ramblings make some sense. To those who've read the manga, I'm sure you see things I've missed. If you listen this far and haven't actually seen or read Pluto yet, your upcoming experience will definitely provide you with more. There is a lot. It's a great story, and there's plenty more to cover and plenty more minutia that becomes greater, but I think I've covered enough. My one final thought is nobody in this story seems to truly understand what it means to be human, least of all the humans. Before moving on to trivia, I do want to do a call to action here. What do you think about all this? It's very easy to kind of read this from the surface level, take it for what it is, and not really go in depth. But I did fall in love with the complexity of the robots in this tale. It's, I think, everything Tezuka would have wanted, but limited by the era, limited by technology, and probably limited by the demographic that he was writing to. So yeah, email me, twinbeepodcast@gmail.com. Let me know what you think. Let me know your thoughts. Now let's lighten this load by moving on to trivia. And this will be short. Stuff is missing, and that's by design at this point. Das Gesicht is German for face. I don't know the reasoning behind this, but Gesicht does get a huge facelift. Mont Blanc is the highest mountain in Frankish Empire, fitting for this veritable mountain of a robot. His creator is Reinhardt, which has a few meanings, but the name means brave counsel in German. Epsilon is Greek for 5. He was the 6th robot killed, but as Adam revives, it turns out he was the 5th. Fitting. Robbie is hopefully a reference for Robbie the Robot from one of the greatest early sci-fi movies ever, Forgotten Planet. The mysterious scarred doctor who saves Paul Duncan is Osamu Tezuka's Blackjack character. The dog-shaped patrol cars are found in various works by Osamu Tezuka. Uran with the animals kind of relates to the Red Cat story. The obsolete robot made possibly from an episode of Phoenix titled Future. There is a white lion that's mentioned somewhere, which is a reference to Kimba. And of course, the mysterious Brau 1589 is from Tezuka's Blue Knight story. Now for some likes, the whole thing. I love how 500 Zeosabari has a negative connotation through the entire story, only to learn that it was actually a beautiful moment. Like, great storytelling. Hercules and Brando can remove their AI and insert it into armors. They otherwise walk around in human bodies. In the OG tale, all the robots are just the robots. What you see is what you get. So they're just giant machines all the time. It's dumb, but I love this almost Gundam wingness to the robot creators. They all knew each other and all had one particular thing they specified in and were in different parts of the world. Also, if you remember, Treize Kushrenada had a whole speech about how war became less distinguished after mankind started using bombs and missiles, which is why mobile suits were created. We evolved to the point of getting right back on the battlefield. This is somewhat similar. Adam's power in PLUTO wasn't in horsepower, but in mental capacity. I think Urasawa's is more fitting for the complexity of AI as opposed to just machined power. And while many of the robots are repeatedly stated as physically powerful, PLUTO uses a lot of psychological attacks. So they obviously stretch beyond physicality. The ending is sad and similar to Devilman Crybaby, a little less traumatic, but I always love a sad ending. Some of the resources for this episode, the beginning of the first Astro Boy Omnibus and the end of the PLUTO books include interviews with their respective creators, the astroboy.fandom wiki, and then MSN and Express UK articles on Yellowstone, which was kind of a fun thing to do some research on for as small as it was. I don't do it often, but yeah, some of the music that I listened to for this did a lot of Kamasi Washington, a lot of John Coltrane, and of course shouts outs to Andre 3000's new album, New Blue Sun, and the Italian metal band Messa for basically being what I listened to while writing this. Shameless plugs. If you subscribe to Podass's Patreon, that's Podcasters Assemble, you can hear me chat about Hideaki Anno's Shin Godzilla with Eric, Zach, and Steven. You can also find me on Neatcast episode 134 and keep your eyes open for my appearance on one of their 12 rants of Christmas. Yeah, if you want to reach out to me, find me on YouTube, Twimby, or The World Is My Burrito. It's not like a / link yet. I don't have enough people, so just search it. Social media, Twimby Podcast. Email, twimbypodcast@gmail.com. So yeah, reach out, give me your opinions, whatever, man. So, yeah, we'll do another one of these. I won't take as long for the next one, I promise. And then we also have taquitos. Goodbye.